Hi, this is Kerala at KeralaFickling.com and WelcomeNetwork.com. And if you remember, I said I was going to return. It took me a couple of days, but return and to look at, continue looking at the irregular verbs. But I stopped off at the verb to have because I was running out of time. Now, the verb to have is an extremely important verb in English. I would say, I don't like to judge verbs here and what's more important than others, because the verb to get is also important. The reason I would say that the verb to have is the second most important verb versus the verb to get, for one reason. The verb to have, like the verb to be, can be it can be a main verb, but it can also be an auxiliary verb. When you want to make the progressive forms in English, whether you're talking about the simple progressive, such as the simple present progressive, past progressive, future progressive, conditional progressive, and let me just give you an example of what I'm talking about. Let me use the person you are eating, you were, that's the present progressive. You were eating, that's the past progressive. You will be eating, that's the future progressive. You would be eating, that's the conditional progressive. The last three, you use it in a complex sentence, right? You're talking about the verb to be. So when you see progressive, grammatically speaking, the auxiliary that you use is the verb to be. Now when you're talking, and that's the verb estar in español, okay? Estar, okay? Sería, estás comiendo, estabas or estuve. No, let me see. Let me use the verb. Let me use tú. So tú estás. So estás comiendo, estabas comiendo, estuviste comiendo. You know, depending on how you use estabas y estuviste. That would be the past progressive. Future progressive sería estarás comiendo, and the conditional progressive sería estarías comiendo. Okay, so that's just a translation into Spanish. Once again, it's, you just can't use it by itself like that, especially if you're talking about estabas, estuviste, estarás, and estarías. Okay, comiendo. Now, when you're talking about also just one more thing. Also, when you're talking about the perfect progressives, okay. But first, let me tell you what the perfects mean, and then progressive mean. All right. Now, when you're talking about the perfect tenses in English, whether you're talking about the present perfect, which would be the present tense of the verb to have, but it's the same verb that looks like the verb to have when you mean ownership, to own or to possess something, but it's used differently. So if you're talking about present perfect, which would be I, you, we, they, he, she, it, I, you, we, they have, he, she, it has. The past perfect, which would be the past tense of the verb to have, which would be I, you, we, they, he, she, it had. The future perfect, which would be the future of the verb to have, which would be I, you, we, they, he, she, it will have. Or the conditional perfect, which would be the conditional of the verb to have, which is I, you, we, they, he, she, it would have. Okay, so when you see the perfect, no matter which tense, it's the verb to have. So that's why I say the verb to have is in second of importance to the verb to be, because it's also an auxiliary. But when it's an auxiliary, it means something different. It's translated differently than when it means to own or to possess. When you mean own or to possess, it's a simple main verb, and it's the verb tener, which is tengo, tienes, tiene, tenemos, tienen, no? But when you're talking about to have, when you're talking about it as the auxiliary in order to form a perfect tense, for example, he hablado, has hablado, ha hablado, hemos hablado, han hablado. All that, the a, the as, the a, the hemos, the an, that's haber. Well, you know that. I'm telling you anything you don't know. That's haber, and that's the verb to have, but it's translated as haber. Okay? So that's why I said it probably is the second most important verb. But even as the verb to have, or as a main verb, let me say it's a main verb, the verb to have has other meanings other than to own or to possess. The own or to possess is more a literal meaning. Like I have, let's imagine in my hand I have money. So I have money. Tengo dinero en la mano, no? Alright, but to have has other meanings. More metaphorical, much more metaphorical, much more idiomatic. So as I said, I think I said this in the other video, just in case I didn't. You can come into welcomenetwork.com, look for books, downloads, not cards so much, but the books that I've written. Now, any book that you download, or any paper or anything that I've compiled together, for example, my dictionary on British versus American English, on British English, British Irish, well, British Irish is included, but British English, Australian English, Canadian, Jamaican, all that stuff. You're going to get it in a rough copy. So you're going to see mistakes. It's not going to be the most perfect copies, but it'll be enough so that you can do whatever you need, get as much information as you need on that particular subject matter. Go in and look for understanding and speaking English metaphorically. Download that, or don't, and just look at it. Go past all of the verbs to be. It'll be about 300 or 400 pages of verbs to be. Verbs to be in that the verb to be in that you have all these expressions with the verb to be. Then you'll see expressions with the verb to get, to have, to do, to make. Okay. I would say the three most important verbs in English, 4, would be, first of all, of course, the verb to be, which is irregular in all tenses, not the future and not the conditional, okay, but in other tenses it is. The verb to do and the verb to have, and I'm going, well, maybe the verb to do first, verb to have. It really doesn't make that much difference. But all 3 of those verbs are irregular in all the 3 major tenses: the present tense, the past tense, and in the perfect tenses. Okay, very few verbs. I don't know any verb that's irregular in the progressive tenses. So that's why I had to come back and talk to you about the verb to have. So let's continue looking at irregular verbs in English translated into Spanish. I have a little bit more time. I spent it all talking about the verb to be. Okay, so the verb to hear is oír or escuchar. And by the way, when I'm looking over here, I'm looking at the cards themselves. And the past tense is heard. The past participle is also heard. Okay. To hide, esconder. The past tense is hid. The past participle is hidden. H-I-D-D-E-N. Hidden. Hidden. Not the easiest to say. The verb to hit, which is pegar or golpear. Also to hit metaphorically, idiomatically also means, if you say I hit it, that means gané. Yeah, I got it. I hit it. Right? It's used that's when it's used metaphorically, right? And if you have a hit, which is a noun, not a verb, but I thought I would just tell you this. When you say you had a hit, tenías o tuviste un éxito, right? Fue un éxito. It was a hit. All right. And a hit in that respect is you're talking about a song. When it's a book, you don't necessarily call it a hit. You call it a bestseller. I'm out of time. CorralAFitland.com.